A couple days ago I talked about which kind of lenses you can buy, the zoom or the prime, and also other form factors of lenses. Today I'm talking about the lenses I actually use, and spoiler, I am using primes only. So the question about primes versus zooms is already talked about in the other video, and I will link that up here. It is something that you have to decide for yourself if you want to go for the zoom lenses to give you more variations, or if you want to go for example, artistic challenge and also the better light quality and picture quality that you get with the prime lenses, for example. The lenses I actually use is the 25mm Batis Distagon f2, and it's made from ZEISS, and I also have the Batis 85mm 1.8. In addition to that, I recently also got the Sigma 35mm 1.4. This is the Canon mount version, and I'm using it with the Sigma MC11 adapter, and that gives me the option to also mount this lens to the E-mount of the Sony A7. In terms of zoom versus prime, I decided to go with prime lenses a couple years ago because I really like to have this kind of limitation to only this one thing, and it gives me one less thing to worry about when actually taking the picture. After I mount the lens on the camera, I actually don't really have to think about the zoom anymore, and if I'm thinking about zooming, then I can do it either with my feet or I can just switch the lens. One big advantage in that area, and that is something that I just recently thought of, is that if you actually give the camera to someone else and maybe you want a picture taken of yourself, it is much easier for them to take a nice picture with a prime lens because they actually cannot zoom. Let's say you want to have a new picture taken and it should be a headshot. If you actually own a 85mm for a full frame camera or maybe a 50mm on a crop sensor, you can just give that camera and lens combination to someone and say they should take a picture. They might wonder why they can't zoom, but then you can just say you have to use your feet to actually zoom. The thing is, they are not able to zoom in any ways, but if you would give them a zoom lens, maybe they would be too close to you, and then they would just change the zoom to maybe 18mm or something like that, and that would give you distortions all over your face in the picture. But giving someone a lens that is only one focal length actually limits them also to just make a nice picture with that lens, and that may be a good reason to also use a prime lens. I personally like this effect as well, because for me, getting a new focal length actually means thinking about it and then also buying a new lens. So adding a new focal length to my kind of lens repertoire actually means buying a new lens and investing in a new glass. The thing there is that it actually requires more thinking than just zooming in or out. And that way I actually limit myself to a couple focal lengths that have really good reasons behind them. The focal lengths I have is 25, 35 and 85. The 25 is my go-to focal length for video making. It is not super wide to have this kind of GoPro look, but it's wide enough to kind of give a almost immersive view. And this here is actually the 25mm, so I can spread my arms out and I can reach out of the frame, but I can still touch the camera, and it really looks interesting, I would say. It is something that is not really possible with the 35 because the 35 would need to be farther away and it compresses everything a little more. As long as I stay in the center, this is a nice solution, I would say, but if I go to the sides, it actually gets a little distorted and my head kind of looks funny, I would say. So having this kind of combination is a great one. Additionally, the Batis, which I chose in terms of this focal length area, is actually really nice in terms of aperture. It has a nice 2.0 aperture, wide open. It is nicely sharp as I find it, and you cannot really hear the autofocus, which is incredible for video. And as far as I researched that, there is something about the motors that are really nicely connected, and that is definitely something that is completely different with the Sigma 35 because that is really, really loud in terms of autofocus. But the autofocus on the Batis lenses is super silent and it works really well for this kind of video making and also autofocus use. On top of that, the Batis also have this really nice display on the top here as an OLED display that shows the focal distance, and I don't really use that very often because I rarely manually focus, but it works really nicely to see that as well. The focus ring itself is also really nice and it feels, I think, really good to work with it. One thing about these lenses that I find a little bit annoying is that they don't have a manual and autofocus switch on themselves. You always have to do that in the camera, but if you use the kind of custom button settings on the Sony A7 line, you can just have a nice button set there. From the 25 that I'm using right now, we can go to the 35mm, which is the Art Series Sigma lens and is a 1.4 and definitely quickly becoming my new favorite lens for photography and especially taking nice pictures of people. I really enjoy this lens because it's really sharp. It gives me a nice shallow depth of field, especially with the 1.4, and also the autofocus is still quick in the lens combination that I'm using it for. Now I know it's probably not a perfect lens for my camera because there's also the Sony 35mm 1.4, but that is almost double the price, even including the adapter that I needed here. So in general, I really love this lens for photo taking. In terms of video, it's a different story because the autofocus is really loud and I absolutely hate that aspect of this lens. You can basically not use the autofocus on this camera if you intend to use the sound of the lens as well. It's really loud and I would not recommend you to do that. But you have the manual switch on the side to actually go into the manual focus mode, and then you can use it just like that, and you always can also just kind of override the focus settings which the camera sent and just do the focusing yourself. The adapter that I'm using here is the Sigma MC11. It's a really nice small adapter. It is lightweight. It's something that just was necessary to kind of be able to use this kind of lens, but I heard so many good things about this lens, so I kind of wanted to go that route as well, especially with a couple plans that are coming up and taking nicer pictures for my Instagram and also online portfolio. This adapter I chose over the Metabones because the Metabones is basically just more than double the price than the MC11, and the MC11 is set to be compatible with the Sigma lenses only, but I also tested it with a couple of Canon lenses and that works great as well. So it is really nice to have this option, and it also is able to be upgraded with a cable, so you can actually make a firmware upgrade for this adapter for other lenses to be supported in the future. As mentioned before, I love this lens for pictures, for videos. I really like it in manual, but the autofocus is one of the aspects that I don't like about this lens, and that might be better with others. But for photos, I really like it. And the last lens I have here is the 85mm Batis, also from ZEISS. It is a 1.8 lens and it has the same features that the 25mm also features. You have the OLED screen up here. You have the really nice autofocus and it's really silent and fast. And in general, it's a really nice light intensive lens. I like this for the upper body or portrait shots, and if you have the room, you can take really nice full body or half body shots with this as well. I tend to use this for photography or for some kind of detail shots in videos as well. But in terms of video, obviously you have this focal length of 85mm, so it's kind of hard to keep that stable even if you want to use it on a gimbal. One thing about using those lenses with the gimbal, the 25 works perfect on it. It's really nice and lightweight. The 85 works great as well because it is also really nice and lightweight. The Sigma 35 is a completely different story. It barely works because if the batteries of the gimbal actually go lower, it kind of starts shaking more and more because of the weight of the lens, and that is, by the way, one of the downsides of the Sigma 35. It kind of is a heavy lens and you almost can do a workout with it, and that is comparing to the Batis lenses, which both together weigh in a little bit less than the Sigma 35 with the adapter. So these two lenses are actually basically like in weight, they are one of the Sigma 35, but in general the Sigma 35 in picture quality for the purpose that I'm looking for is an amazing lens, so I'm not really considering to give it up that quickly. Now I will actually give you a quick overview of how the lenses would look in terms of video making. This is the 25mm Batis, and then I will go to the Sigma 35mm 1.4 Art Series lens, and then I will go to the 85mm Batis lens. You may also be able to hear the noise the Sigma is making when using the autofocus, and also the difference in speed of the autofocus, because if I move quickly here back and forth between the camera and the lens, you can actually see that the autofocus is working really nicely and quickly. With the Sigma, that is a completely different story, and it also has this noise problem. You're now seeing a quick sequence of the Sigma 35 1.4. I have set the aperture at 2, and this is how it looks. and maybe you are able to pick up the noise that the focus makes if I move back and forth in front of the lens as it tries to keep my face in focus. And you can also see that it's really hard for the lens to keep me in focus because of the focus being really slow. And now you can also see a quick sequence of the 85mm Batis. As you can see, the focus is absolutely silent, but I had to move a lot further away from the camera. You can see I can reach for the camera, but I really don't reach it. So it's about maybe 2 meters away from me to actually get my face in the frame. The same settings apply. The aperture is set to 2.0, and I find this a really weird situation because it's really hard to actually look into the lens from this far away and talk to the camera. So now I'm back with the 25mm, and I think this is much more engaging, and I can touch the camera, I can wave to you, and this is just much closer, and it's easier to actually feel like I'm talking to someone and not to a camera. So there you have it. My lens collection is the 25 Batis from ZEISS, the 85 Batis from ZEISS, and the Sigma 35 Art Series 1.4. I love them all, and all three of them have really distinct purposes for my shooting style. And I think that is one of the great things of this limitation of having the kind of fixed focal length and prime lenses, to kind of actually think about the lens you're putting on the camera, and then you can just use the best glass you have in that focal length area. Now I know that these three lenses are probably nothing that you think about when you first start out making videos or photos, so I will make a video in the future that will consider more of a basic starter kit, and also the APS-C sensor size, because I have many people asking about this kind of combination, an APS-C camera, but what kind of prime lenses would you choose there, and what would be a good recommendation. So that will come out in the future. Now that wraps it up in terms of my lenses. Now obviously I also have the iPhone and the GoPro, which are fixed cameras, so I don't really have a choice in the lens that they use. And I also use the DJI Mavic Pro, but there's also no lens choice possible. I hope this video was helpful for you. Please give it a like if it was. If you have any questions about my lenses and why I chose them, or if you have anything you want to know about these lenses, please let me know in the comments down below. I will try to answer them as quickly as possible. Subscribe to this channel for more videos like this almost every day, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, and check out the playlist I linked in the description below. There you can find all the other videos that I make about photography and video making, and of course the links to the products and the links to my lenses are all affiliate links. If you buy through these links, you actually support me making these videos and this channel possible. Thank you for that, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.